Welcome to Shadow Fable. Don't forget to subscribe. I remember the first time I noticed that something was off. A chill in the back of my mind that wouldn't let go, even under the bright stage lights and the clamor of applause. I, Elena Monroe, had spent my life basking in the adulation of thousands. Yet, in the quiet hours of night, I learned that behind every spotlight there lurked a shadow, quietly and obsessively following. It began with a single letter, slipped under the door of my downtown apartment, its envelope unmarked except for a faded return address that I couldn't place. I still recall the rough, uneven handwriting. You are mine, always. At first, I dismissed it as nothing more than an eccentric fan's misguided affection. A relic of my early career when fans used to send handwritten notes with timid adoration. But something in that letter felt different. It smelled faintly of old paper, and a trace of something metallic, like rusted iron. The message inside was an odd mix of poetry and declarations of undying love, filled with references to moments in my films as if the writer had watched every scene, observed every nuance. Yet there was a certain hollowness to it, a sense of yearning that seemed to pulse with every word. A few days later, another envelope appeared. This time, I found it in my makeup bag at a live event. I was attending a gala, a glamorous affair with sparkling chandeliers and the hum of sophisticated conversation. But as I excused myself to inspect this new delivery, the lively atmosphere melted into an unsettling silence. The second letter was longer, filled with detailed accounts of the days leading up to the event, the precise timing of my arrival, the color of the dress I wore, the exact words I exchanged with a fellow actor. It felt as if the writer had not only followed me, but had been living in my every moment. The room seemed to close in on me while I read, and I left the gala in a haze of anxiety, wondering if the familiar warmth of the spotlight was now being replaced by something dark and predatory. Over the next several weeks, the letters came with increasing regularity. Their tone shifted from infatuated adoration to something far more possessive and sinister. I remember your smile the day you agreed to shine for the world. Now I will be the light that watches you, one letter proclaimed, its penmanship increasingly erratic as if written by a mind unraveling in isolation. My nights turned restless. I found myself checking the locks and peering through curtains, always half expecting to see a pair of eyes watching from the dark. The once familiar hum of the city now seemed to whisper, secrets meant only for me. One humid evening, after a particularly long day on set, I returned to my apartment, the air saturated with the scent of damp pavement and exhaust fumes, a scent that always made me anxious. As I slid the key into the door, I paused. Something lay on the doorstep, a small package wrapped in brown paper. I brought it inside with trembling hands, and when I unwrapped it, I found a single black feather pressed between the pages of an old, battered book of poetry. The feather was immaculate, almost unnaturally so, and as I held it, I could almost feel a heartbeat beneath its delicate structure. It was a sign, a message, perhaps, from the writer whose words had become my private torment. The police were of little help, their assurances empty and their eyes dismissive as they cataloged my accounts with bureaucratic indifference. "It's just an overzealous fan," they said. "Nothing to worry about." But my worry grew each day. I could sense his presence everywhere, a silent observer in the periphery of my life. At movie premieres, during interviews, even on quiet walks in the park, that sense of being watched accompanied me like a dark cloud. Even my phone, once a lifeline connecting me to friends and admirers, began buzzing with strangely timed notifications, silent messages that glowed with the same inky black handwriting, urging me to see beyond the masks you wear. Nightmares soon invaded my sleep. I dreamt of wandering labyrinthine corridors filled with mirrors and shadowed figures. In one such nightmare, I saw his face, thin, pale, and haunted, with eyes that promised both adoration and doom. I'd wake in a cold sweat, convinced that the gap between dream and reality had blurred. The sensation of being engulfed by unseen eyes during the dark hours became so acute that even the creaks of my old apartment seemed to murmur conspiracies against me. The turning point came one rain-soaked night. I had been rehearsing lines for a press conference in the solitude of my apartment when my phone rang, its shrill tone breaking the monotony of rain against the window. It was an unknown number. My heart pounded as I answered, expecting the worst. A soft, almost imperceptible whisper slithered through the line. "I see you, Elena. Tonight, you will be mine." The voice was intimate, maddeningly familiar, yet disturbingly disembodied. Before I could muster a response, the line went dead. I stared at the phone in disbelief, my mind racing with a blend of terror and resignation. That was the final piece of the puzzle, the acknowledgement of an obsession that had crept into every crevice of my life. I resolved to confront this madness head-on. I decided to set a trap, hoping to lure the stalker out into the open. I arranged for a private screening of one of my films at an upscale theater known for its discreet clientele. Underneath the guise of a charitable event, I invited a select few, confident that the anonymity of a crowded venue would keep me safe while simultaneously provoking him. I engineered the event so that I would have an escort and a small security detail, though inside my mind I clung desperately to the hope that nothing terrible would happen. The night of the screening was cold and clear, a rare chill that hinted at the impending storm, both meteorologically and metaphorically. As guests murmured their anticipation in hushed tones and the projector flickered to life on the darkened screen, my gaze was fixed on the entrance. I felt the tremor of my heartbeat echo in the silence of my backstage refuge. Then, in the midst of this orchestrated safety, I noticed a man lingering at the far edge of the crowd, a solitary figure whose intense, unblinking eyes were fixed on me. His presence was anomalous amid the carefully curated anonymity of the event. His clothes were unremarkable, yet his gaze, cold and unwavering, had a disconcerting familiarity. I tried to brush off the chill that crept over me. "It's just a coincidence," I murmured to myself, the words barely audible. But as the minutes passed, he gradually moved closer, weaving through the dimly lit seats, always keeping his eyes on me. I could feel my pulse thunder in my ears. Every instinct screamed danger. The sensation was overwhelming. The crowd around me faded into a blur, replaced by the inescapable focus on this man, whose presence now seemed both supernatural and menacing. Towards the end of the screening, the theater's ambient lighting dimmed further, echoing the descent of my own inner darkness. I excused myself to the lobby, making sure to leave a trail for the security detail. I needed a moment to gather my thoughts, to re-center myself. But as I reached the lobby, I was met not with the expected hum of conversation, but with a stark silence that punctuated the air like a harbinger of doom. In the reflective surfaces of a marble column, I caught a glimpse of him again. A fleeting, horrifying vision of the man's gaunt face, mirroring a distorted version of my own fear. It was as though he was reading my soul, seeing every secret and vulnerability. Before I could react, I felt a cool hand on my shoulder, and a deep, gravelly whisper reached my ear. "You and I are destined, Elena." I spun around, but the hallway was empty, silent, and unyielding. The echo of his words lingered, a venomous promise that threatened to strangle me with terror. My mind flitted to the letters, the messages that had spiraled into a maddening obsession. I realized then that he was not content with mere correspondence. He craved an intimacy that defied normal bounds, an existence within my every moment. Determined to reclaim control of my life, I decided to confront the ominous letters head-on. I gathered all of the correspondence, each envelope, each carefully written note now stained with my mounting anxiety. I spent hours dissecting every word, every line, trying to decipher a pattern or hidden meaning. The language had a poetic cadence, a warped sonnet of longing that wove between adoration and derangement. In the margins of one letter, I discovered what appeared to be a scrawled map, a series of coordinates that led to a derelict estate on the outskirts of the city. It was a desperate plea or a veiled threat, I could not be sure. Yet, the pull of the unknown was irresistible, a siren call that promised resolution to the terror that had ensnared me. With a trembling heart, I ventured to the estate, a decrepit mansion half swallowed by wild ivy and shadowed by ancient trees. Its broken windows and creaking doors seemed to warn of secrets best left undisturbed. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, a sensory assault that heightened my growing dread. Inside, the interior was choked with darkness and the ghosts of forgotten memories. I followed the map's cryptic instructions through dusty corridors until I finally reached a room at the very heart of the mansion. There, lying atop a time-worn desk, was a final letter, a culmination of the haunting words that had led me here. In bold, desperate script, it read, "Our souls intertwine beyond the confines of reality. You are the beacon of my existence." It was signed simply E. The single initial sent a shock through me. I remembered a fragment from a long-forgotten role, a character who had vanished after a scandalous controversy. Had that persona become imbued in this deranged devotee, or was this merely another manifestation of his delusion? My thoughts twisted as I pondered this possibility. The boundaries between my public persona and my private self had always been blurred, hounded by the relentless gaze of admirers and critics alike. But now I was forced to face the dark mirror of a fanatic's love that had escalated into obsession. I realized that this clandestine individual was less a man than a fragmented identity, a specter birthed of my own mythos and the vast collective longing that surrounded celebrity. His hatred was as much a reflection of my own vulnerabilities as it was his deranged desire. Suddenly, a noise echoed in the corridor, a shuffling sound that was both deliberate and erratic. I spun around, my eyes straining against the oppressive darkness. A figure emerged from the far end of the room, obscured by shadows. The light of a single, swinging bulb cast eerie, angular patterns across his face, revealing wild, unhinged eyes that burned with a fervor I had only seen in my worst nightmares. For a moment, time seemed to freeze, the air thick with unspoken words and palpable terror. "You finally came," he murmured, his voice a blend of adoration and menace. "I have waited for you, Elena. I have loved you in the silence of my despair, and now I must claim what is mine." His trembling hand reached out toward me, as if to erase the distance that separated reality from the fevered delusions of his mind. In that moment, I felt a surge of resolve mingled with an overwhelming sorrow, an acknowledgement that the man before me was both a victim of his own warped fantasies and a harbinger of the destruction my identity had wrought. In a surge of defiance, I stepped back, retracing my steps until I found a side door hidden behind a decaying tapestry. My heart pounded loudly in my ears as I dashed into the night, the abandoned mansion shrinking behind me like a terrible secret. I didn't look back, even when I heard his desperate cry echoing through the corridors. The rain had started again, a cold, relentless downpour washing away the stains of fear and leaving me trembling in the shadows of an uncertain future. In the weeks that followed, I struggled to reclaim a semblance of normality. The letters stopped arriving, as though the obsessive thread had been cut, yet an uneasy mark remained on my soul. I would catch a glimpse of a man in the distance, a fleeting figure on a busy street, or a blurred shape in the rearview mirror of my car, and for a heartbeat, I'd believe that the darkness was closing in once more. The events of that harrowing night haunted my every waking moment, a spectral presence reminding me that sometimes the most dangerous demons are born from the very passions we unwittingly inspire. I eventually sought refuge in my craft, channeling the raw terror of those memories into roles that explored the intimate boundaries of love, obsession, and identity. In interviews and quiet confessions off camera, I spoke of the perilous cost of stardom, that beneath the glitter and glamour lay a reality where every smile carried a hidden sorrow, where every accolade was shadowed by the risk of losing oneself to the demands of an unrelenting audience. I learned that adoration, when taken to an extreme, becomes a corrosive force, capable of distorting the truth and twisting reality into something unrecognizable. Yet, even as I returned to a semblance of normalcy, I remained vigilant. Each time I received a fan letter, even a benign one, it triggered a flicker of anxiety, a reminder of the dark undercurrents that flow beneath the surface of our lives. I realized that the horror of that experience was not confined to a singular moment or a deranged individual, but was part of a broader tapestry of the human condition, a dance with the shadows of our desire, where we must confront the parts of ourselves we'd rather keep hidden. In the end, the fan's delusion became a cautionary tale not only of obsession and peril, but also of the fragile boundary between love and madness. As I continue my journey beneath the unforgiving spotlight, I am ever aware that the ghosts of the past linger at the edges of reality, waiting for the moment when the light dims and the darkness is left to speak its unsettling truth. And so, with each performance, I step forward, vulnerable yet resilient, a living testament to the price of art and the delicate balance between adoration and terror. The chilling memory of that night remains etched in my heart, a constant reminder that some shadows are born not of malice, but of twisted devotion. And while I have moved on from that horrifying encounter, I know that in the silent spaces between the glow of the stage and the darkness of the night, the echo of a disturbed admirer still lingers, waiting for the right moment to reappear and challenge the boundaries of my carefully constructed reality.